Welcome, Jamil.
Thank you.
As always, I'm excited to be able to sit and talk with you about everything underneath the sun, right? And so we connected the first time you walked into Life Wellness Center. Ade and I were really just kind of sitting down because we were tired. And then you walked in, and I kind of looked up at the couch from the couch, and it was just like, who is this man? All right. Over time, I'm really satisfied in how I'm discovering who you are. It is a pleasure. It's a real pleasure. So the first time we took a video of you working and posted it on our Instagram page, it caused quite a bit of hoopla in the world, and it did. And yeah, man, like you just got like a nickname of Black Jesus. In the circumference of the people who came in, was like, who's this person? I said, well, aside from how beautiful he is, because he is beautiful, he's an amazing healer. And so I want to talk about your foundation, where you're from, who your people are, you know, what really makes you you. So tell me about you.
Thank you for having me. At this time, I want to tell you a story of how I came to know of you all, you and Ade.
Of course.
Who am I? I'm a child of humble people, people who grew up close to the earth. Both my parents are from the country. Both of them grew up on farms. And so growing up watching my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, cousins, like everybody living on the same road. Nobody, if there were 40 families on that one road, everybody was kin. Right? And so it was a different experience. Like they built their own church, like everything was theirs.
Wow.
So to experience it as a child as like the foundation of what a community can look like and feel like creates like, it sets the standard for me as I got a chance to grow up. And growing up in Richmond, where it's living more traditional, like city, suburban environment, knowing that like where my roots come from, like both sides of my family having family reunions every year. My parents are very big on, you will know where you come from.
Staying connected.
Yeah. Staying connected and being deeply rooted. And so it's taken me, as a child, I don't think I really appreciated or really understood it because I was comparing like what my experience was to my friends. Right. And
which
being in their household.
Was it altogether different?
Very different, right? Just how like the dynamic of most of my friends' households was very different from mine. And so it wasn't until it really wasn't until I went to college where I realized, okay, like all the things that my parents were kind of instilling in me, like these are life lessons. And like now I realize, okay, these are tools that I can use. So who am I? I mean, I'm blessed, yo. I'm blessed, man.
I said, I was talking to one of my sons, Ajani, and this is like, I think he was probably like just out of high school, and he was having conversations with some of his friends, and I remember he told one of his friends, is like, "Yo, your mom doesn't sage you before you leave the house." And he was just like, he said, "She'll love you." I was like, "What is wrong with you? How are you going to tell people that?" But it's the thing of the way that your family, your parents, your mother, your father, how they hold you safe, things that you took for granted or didn't understand at the time. But when you step out into the world and then you can look back on, you're connected to that. I think that's what makes us fly even bigger, right? And so tell me about your dad. Like, what was his love language?
Oh, gee. My pop's nickname, I call him Pops, but like he's known in the city as like Smitty. So my father's a builder, construction worker. Didn't have the opportunity to go to college. He got drafted and went to Vietnam. But once he found construction, he found like that was his thing.
Yeah.
Like my father could have been an architect, but like had he gone to college, like that was his thing. And so for him, it was building. As a kid, he would. I was sharing you earlier. One of my fondest memories of my dad is like as a kid, 7, 8 years old, he took me to the woods one day, on a day like today.
Yeah.
I was at home hanging out. He's like, "Come here, I'm gonna show you something." And this is how my dad teaches. He does it. He's not very gregarious. he teaches through action,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to just glean it and
Mm-hmm.
just keep just practice. If you leave the neighborhood, we walk into the woods, go into the bush, getting deeper and deeper into the woods. And I'm like, yo, Dad, where are we going? Like, what are we doing?
Right.
He's like, you see that tree? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what type of tree is that? I'm like, I don't know. What's the difference? He's like, look at the bark.
Mm.
Notice the difference in the bark between these types of trees. Right? This is beech. This is birch. This is something, something, something. Right? Notice the leaves. These leaves are poisonous. These leaves are not. Right? Notice how they grow.
Right.
Um, so we're in the woods maybe like 30 minutes. My dog is like this. He goes off into the distance. My father, we walking like another 15, 20 minutes into the woods. And there's this little like knocked over shack. And he's like, you see this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, this is where I grew up.
Woo.
And he says, you remember that house back on the main on Mountain Road? Yes, it's a big old white picket fence house. He's like, that used to be the master's house. And this was the slave's quarters that he grew up in.
Yo, you got like chills right now. There's chills.
8 years old, man. My dad telling me this. And so I went home and asked my mom that story. And she was like, so when I say I come from like humble beginnings, like I mean it. Like when my father was a kid, like they would walk from their house to school, and like all the stories you probably heard. Like my father didn't have shoes; he wore it in the snow. Literally, he had to wear Sister's jellies and all those things. But what really struck me is really interesting is I've taken that road all my life for like practice to go to school and come and eat church and everything. And coming home, there was a field probably 300 yards from my father, where our neighborhood is now.
Right.
So the neighborhood we live in, where I grew up in, was actually across the street from the woods where my father was born.
Right.
Talk about full circle. And he's like, there would be nights we would have to come home and there would be crosses burning. And there would be clan meetings about 300, 400 yards from where he lived. And I'm like, well, what would you do? He's like, well, we would have to get off the road and walk into the ditch and like crawl past them and then keep walking home. And I was like, how could you live like that? And he was like, all he cared about was just protecting his family, like just staying safe.
Yeah.
You know, until, when he was 8, 10, 14 years old going through that. So like, I come from a father who had to experience those things and also like not have like that hate in him, but also had like a confidence and strength in him that like, if I can deal with this BS and like, what else is there? And then you couple that with like how my mother grew up, which she grew up on all this farmland, all black family, and to them wealth is what you do with your own hands.
Right.
The soul is there for you. If you till it, you can earn something from it.
You can create it.
You can create it. And so my mom has a really good sense of like, she's always managed a home because she's been given a lot more of those skills than my father was given in how they grew up. But having that balance in the household really helped me because my parents never had like a gender dynamic of like specific roles. Right. This is the task of a man, this is the task of a woman. So when my dad was away for Desert Storm, for example, my mom cut my grass. She used to cut her hair. She's a librarian. She'd leave work. She'd come home. She'd cook dinner. And she'd go outside and cut the grass when we were too young to do it ourselves.
Right.
Right. But then she always told us, like, we can know how to iron, know how to cook, know how to clean, to be self-sufficient. Like, don't ever be dependent on another woman to do something for you that you can do yourself.
That you can do for yourself, yeah.
And my father told me the same thing. He's like, my father can clean better than my mother can. So I grew up in a household where, like, and even in my extended family, where, like, the men usually were the cooks and the clean, they would serve the women.
Right.
And so it really took me like going out and seeing other friends and how they live, or how men would kind of be served by women. Like that wasn't my norm. How I grew up.
So when you started really getting into relationships, like really looking for people that you can partner with, right? Not just, we're hooking up, whatever, but everyone gets to an age or a time when they're like, I'm looking for someone. Did you find that the people that you were encountering could appreciate who you were because of who you came from, being able to not see these roles as this is what I do or this is what you do, but we're coming together as a whole? Do you feel like they appreciated that, or did they take it for granted? Or was it just something they never saw before?
I think it's a combination of all of the above. I think what has always attracted me to a woman has been I think there are moments where we see each other. we see who we are and we see the potential in us. We see the beauty in each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like from my experience in relationships is usually where it breaks down is where we allow what the things that we've accepted through society,
Right.
right? And we take those things on consciously or subconsciously, and that gets in the way
Yeah,
of
because
like of
there's
our
some
magic.
label that, or some way it's supposed to look. It's a fairy tale that someone created, and we're told that almost forget what it is that you learned growing up.
Yeah.
This is what we're marketing. It's supposed to be like this hallmark experience, and I think that really causes a lot of clashes, in our relationships was as we're building our life partner process. Um, when like I think when I was maybe 17 years old, I met my first real relationship, like the fall in love, like, oh my God, the sun and the moon and the stars. I love him. That's it. Right.
Right.
And he was 10 years older than me. And so we had four beautiful children. And I realized after maybe 16 years with him that I was not the same person I was when I met him. Right. But there was this magic about my own growing that happened because I was in that relationship. And then I met good brother Ade, who he didn't give me space to fall in love. He was like, stand up. We ain't got time to fall. Right. And so it came almost like not harsh, but Ade is a very disciplined, structured, rigid, this is where we go in kind of person. And if you aren't able to hear that language, you can miss some beautiful cues of I love you. This is what my I love you sounds like. How do you think a person gets to a point that they're able to hear the language? Because the first time, to be honest, my first husband and my current partner are very similar. They're just different in height, right? And complexion. Very same full, like good character, hardworking people, family men, structure, all of that. But I think the person who I was in my early 20s didn't mature enough to hear this language that this other person was coming to me. Like what have you matured into to be able to hear the language now? Because there's things that people are probably telling you that they said before, but you didn't hear. Yeah. So what has changed? And he laughs. He's like, everything changed.
A couple of things. One, so many things. One thing that I noticed in my last relationship, and I answer in reverse order. Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed in my last relationship, which I would say has been my most. Every relationship has been like an evolution into the next.
Right.
Right. So I realized that my desire to be partnered with a woman was really a way of saying thank you to my parents because of the way that they modeled the behavior and like the life that they created for my brother and myself. Mm-hmm. I want to say like thank you because it gave me a foundation. And seeing how many, like, I think of all the women I've dated, it may have been two whose fathers either been alive, right, or like with their mother. Mm-hmm. So I knew that coming in, and we had different experiences. Mm-hmm. And I've learned that like my experience is not better. You know what I'm saying? Just different. Just different.
Right. Right.
I think earlier, when I was younger, it was like when I was 7 to 8 years old, like a lot happened in my life, and I feel like that's when I knew what my future would be. But I had no way of getting there. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know how I would get there. Mm-hmm. But I also could see like my life partner. I could see her, but she always had her back to me. Okay. And so imagine like this beautiful woman standing like in the water with her back to me, and like as I would get older, I would have this recurring dream where she would begin to turn her face, and I could see the kind of the contour of her jawbone. Mm-hmm. So I knew when I would meet a woman and she kind of has a certain aura about her, it's like, yo, that's the woman I'm attracted to. There's something about her that feels familiar, that feels like home.
Feels like home. So, home has a lot of good memories, and it also has a lot of trauma, right? So, in my family, my father has passed away. It's about 5 years now. And I didn't remember a lot of things that was joyful about our relationship in my adult years. I really concentrated on, the arguing in the household and so forth. But at the funeral, it's when everything came back. I was like, oh man, my dad was like dope. Like he was funny. Like we would explore Prospect Park, or we went on helicopter rides, or some kids would play hooky. My dad made us play hooky. He's like, you ain't need to go. Let's go to the movies. I'm like, really? Don't tell your mother. Okay. And then we would just go and hang out in Central Park and go to the movies and just chill because he felt like we needed that time. But because of home had like this dichotomy of both love and hate, both softness and hardness, anger and joy, that sometimes we missed remembering the good part because the hardship story was so much inflicted into our psyche. And so as a woman, um finding relationships where I didn't just delve into that and just go, okay, bad things always happen in relationships, bad things always happen to me. That was a lot of work that I had to do for myself. And so as a practitioner, as a acupuncturist, when you speak with some of your patients, this somatic memory that of trauma, how does it show up in their bodies? You see that coming, right? That was a great question.
Great question.
That was an amazing question. I'm doing great.
You.
I'm great.
You don't, yeah. How does it show up? In so many ways. So the way I always introduce the conversation is like, where are you? Where is that person? And like, what do you mean? And I like to start the conversation with very open-ended questions because it lets me know where it lands. Like that's where we're going to start.
Right.
So how are they sitting? So for example, oftentimes I'll notice with some patients that I work with, it'll be one-sided. The right side of their body holds everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're like, my mother too, or my grandmother too,
mm-hmm.
right? Or it's like everybody has experiences fibroids, but nobody's ever talked about this shared experience.
Yeah, fibroids is a thing that we don't necessarily speak very loudly about, especially in my family, and it's a thing that has happened and is happening, but no one ever goes, grandma had it, great grandma, my mom, auntie so and so. No one ever comes together so we can get that information to be able to do something. So you always kind of feel like you're the only one. It's isolating.
Yeah. So I see it, and then it's when there's physical trauma, sexual trauma, it's usually kind of oftentimes held in the hips.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it like? How is this person? How do they move through the world?
Mm-hmm.
Like how are and usually when they come in, I can kind of notice it in how they walk, how they speak.
Yeah.
Like are they? Sometimes they're too open, right? They sometimes we lack boundaries, like healthy boundaries to protect ourselves, and then other times like because we're so traumatized, we're so protected, we almost. I can ask a very genuine question, and it may feel like an attack.
Absolutely.
More than just an inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like I'm very big on like let's build the vocabulary. Like what do I feel in my body? And if I can't name it, then I need to make sure I can feel it. And once I'm clear on what it feels like, then I can find words for it for myself. And so I'm always just trying to ask the person I'm working with, like where are they? Like where are you right now? Like do you feel in your body? Are you dissociated?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where do you feel disruption? Where do you feel balance in your body?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And are you clear on what the difference is?
It's like I remember the first time I had experience a treatment from you, and I'm on it. I kind of know what's happening in my body. I live a life of a person who is creating healing space and also lending to help people, learn how to heal themselves through massage and all the things that I do. And so I thought I got it. I'm on it. And then you just asked me like, how are you feeling in your body? And I was just like, I'm tired. And that was it. That was like my biggest portion of what I could say. It meant that my back hurt. It meant that I hadn't really eaten. Like I think my pulse was kind of slow. It was kind of weak. Um, when you actually walk us through a treatment.
That's fine. So a treatment is like, I love music, so I like to make analogies even when I'm going through like an intake or something. So to me, it's like the way that I approach this, where I approach like acupuncture, herbal medicine, this art of healing. It's like I'm a producer and you're the artist.
Oh,
right.
I like
So
this.
I want to help you be great.
Yeah.
So like let's clear out all the noise, right? So we start with a conversation, right? Let's start with our breath. Like I'm noticing, where are you breathing, right? Where are you holding? And then as we begin to talk, I'm also feeling the pulses. And usually once a person starts sharing, the pulses that are tense begin to like retreat because you express it. You're shaking that load off.
Right,
verbally, right. Um, I want to get a sense of what you're feeling, how associated, how connected to your own body you are. And as we're doing that, that's when the points that we're going to use begin to come, right? So this meridian of the body, right? The liver, kidney, right? The kidney holds fear. The liver is associated with anger, but the liver really deals with all the emotions.
That's right.
So we should be able to experience all the emotions, but not get stuck in any one of them. And when things are getting stuck, that's when you call that stagnation.
Stagnation, yeah.
Right. And stagnation can be headache. It can be digestive issues. It can be fibroids. It can be prostate issues. It can manifest it in so many different ways.
Lack of sleep.
So a treatment to me is like once we are aware of what the challenges are, then let's begin to sweep those away.
Okay.
Right. One by one, sweep those away, and now once we sweep those away, we can get a clearer sense of what's actually happening in the body, in the system. And when I say body, I mean like your whole body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, your mental body.
That's the embodiment of you, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Those four pillars, like those four corners to create a square. So now we got a foundation. And once we have that, now the art comes. Right? Once in the beginning, from that point, I'm beginning to kind of pick like the treatment protocol, like the points I'm going to use. And then it's just like listening, feeling the pulse.
Right.
I'm watching them breathing, right? Are they starting to sigh? And that's like they're getting out all that still air, all that still, those memories. That's beginning to come up. And then from there, we begin to just add things to the plate, add things little by little.
Listen, so our day was in the beginning of the lockdown. We were in the middle of actually still planning a retreat that we were going to do in Jamaica, which we did. We ended up doing it. But we were on a Zoom call, and we were in our bedroom. I was at the desk. He was in the bed. The computer is up. And I just noticed he just kept leaning more and more into the pillow. And I'm like, you good? He's like, yeah, I'm just tired. I'm like, I don't ever hear you say you're tired, right? And so finally, we kind of got through it and shut off the computer, and he just got underneath the covers, and he said, I'm really tired. And I was like, all right. So I touched him. He had a fever. It's COVID. I was like, what's going on with you, right? Like, you don't get to get any kind of anything that's going to take you out of my life. So everything went into attack mode of trying to make sure that I secure all that I needed for him to be well. So there's another holistic healer in Babalao that is a family member. He was called and you were called, and it was Fix Him, right? This was just like a consultation over the phone. Can you talk to me about the herbs that you were able to get to him? Because it was really amazing how it helped him, along with the other herbs and all the things that I was doing for him to, just get well. Because lo and behold, the man had COVID, and I had to make sure that he was okay. But, tell me about that.
Yeah, it's the difference between Eastern and Western medicine is with Western medicine you can have multiple issues, and they give you one solution, which is either a surgery or some sort of like pharmaceutical drug, right? So as a society, we've become trained to assume that like if I give you this one, it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. If I give you this one thing, it's going to fix all these other issues. Knowing that when we watch all these commercials, like at the very end, like they run through all 45 potential things that can, taking this thing fixes one thing but causes 45 other issues.
Right.
That's not natural.
Especially when you
Right.
start hearing erectile dysfunction and you're gonna lose your sight and you
Right.
can't
It's
hear
like
anymore. You're like,
which were
why
issues you
would I
never
do that?
had,
Exactly.
right?
Why would I do that?
So the reason why I started that way is because with Eastern medicine is herbs are very, you can customize them, right?
Right.
Everything has more than one benefit.
Right.
But we also don't give you one specific herb to say, okay, if you experience, if you have COVID, right? My symptoms may not be the same as your symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So the formula that I'm going to give to you versus what I would take for myself would be very different.
Exactly.
Right? And that's where the art, and that's where I think it's more delicate and there's more care in Eastern medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons that I was very attracted to it. Right? It just resonates. It makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So with Ade, like it was the conversation was simply around like, again, what are you feeling right in this moment?
Right.
Right? Knowing that like if we have to be quick about giving you the herbs now because in 2 days your symptoms can completely shift.
Right.
As the pathogen goes deeper or we begin to push it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it was a combination of giving things that were kind of nourishing, but we can't give you herbs that nourish the pathogen as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a delicate balance. We also want to give you herbs that kind of help to open up the pores and help you to sweat and push
Mm-hmm.
out the pathogen.
Mm-hmm.
But that was easy because I knew I did. I know how healthy he is. He has the resources to be able to push something out.
Exactly.
So, but that's again, it's the challenge with the work that we do is like it's not as easy to be able to give like a very quick response because everything is so nuanced.
But I feel like that's the truth of healing. That's the truth of relationships. That's the truth of nothing is quick. We're told, add some water to this concentrate, stir it, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
you have a business, you have children, you have a life partner, you have healing. And that's not the reality of it. If you look at just how herbs grow, how plants grow, how flowers grow, it takes time, it takes nurturing, it's a process. And then you can do all of that and still don't,
Yeah.
you fall short with that. But so you have to be able to always come back to what's the root portion of it. I want to really get back to this conversation about fibroids because it's something that you and I have been speaking about. And when my first really experience with fibroids was with my mom, and I remember my mom being probably in her 40s, and well, actually, always having like trauma when it comes to menstruation. She's also dealt with everything you could think of that I'm probably gonna have to speak with her and let her come on and have a conversation about it. But she's triumphed over a lot of challenging things that's happened to her in her life. And when it became a thing that fibroids was a medical hindrance to her process, like she was bleeding so much, she was in so much pain that she couldn't work. And I've never known my mom not to work, right? So her security always came from the ability to, she could take care of herself, she could take care of her family. And so the trauma of that had her really shook, that she had to lean in on us. There wasn't any real like answers. At that time, mommy is like 70, should be 75 this year. So in her 40s, it wasn't like the doctors going, oh, here's some holistic processes that you can do. It was just like, you need a hysterectomy. And that was always a thing in that time frame. It was like, let's just take it out. Whether it's your gallbladder, whether it's your uterus, like you don't need it. I'm like, well,
It's crazy.
Yeah, if I take this out, like it's going to affect something else. And so she had voice to be able to advocate for herself, right? And she started researching herbs and really trying to figure out ways to help herself. She ended up doing a partial solution of just like being able to remove the fibroids, and then she changed her diet, and that was able to help her. But I know of like a tremendous amount of women who, it's still that. So it's 2021, almost 2022, and we're still being told the best thing that we can do is to cut this out. And no one is really putting as much effort into the why. I mean, there's some studies, but it's mostly women of color who are dealing with fibroids. And the studies aren't that intense to say, well, why is this happening? I have my own theory. There's my theory is like the trauma that we hold will stagnate within your body. But then there's people who are like, I don't have any trauma, I'm great. And I just go, but slavery. You just spoke about your father taking you 8 years old and showing you the house and telling you about this road and the Klan and crosses and to his son, right? And so whatever he dealt with, that's still within his body,
Amen.
right? And it's still on some levels passed to you, this awareness of it, of we survived this situation, we're here, but here's how I'm going to work through my life. So whatever happened to my mom, and it was a lot, happened to me just by me passing through her body, right? And so I realized that and look at how I look at my daughter, and I go, okay, well, let me deal with some of the challenges that I have, so I'm not passing it on to her. So her body is now not holding the trauma of what my mom experienced or my grandmother experienced or my great grandmother experienced, right? Because my great grandmother's story was she had a lot of children, but she had to give them away because she was too poor to keep them. And her first husband, no, my great great grandmother, yes, was in Barbados, and her man was the head man, like the what is it called now? Uh, Not the master, but who would be the person who would be working the slaves, the Africans who are enslaved. Um, he was the person who was keeping them, driving them to work. That was who she had children with, and then would have to give away her children. And then my great grandmother doing the same, and my mom, my grandmother making choices, but also that caused trauma to not have to do that to her children. And so those are things that are somewhere in my body that I'm constantly revisiting and to go, okay, this doesn't belong here. How do we move this out of the way? I don't want this to just stay because then it's going to really create some more stagnation, chi energy not being able to flow. How do we get women to understand that there's a choice? We don't have to just listen to someone saying cut it out, because that could be a possibility that that's what you have to do. But when what we do, how do we empower people to be able to understand that they are powerful?
I think I personally feel like it's very important that we tell our girls, our young girls, that like you being born, you are enough
Hmm.
already. But that's not. We have to go further than that. And not enough. Like you're physically beautiful and attractive. Like everybody has hold some sort of beauty,
Mm-hmm.
but you are enough. And now, what are you gonna do with your magic?
Hmm.
It's not enough just to be beautiful.
Say that part. What are you gonna do with your magic?
Right?
Yeah.
Like as the world is shifting, as society is shifting, like what I choose to do is like I want to kind of help clear the way where the barriers and the challenges that come up in front of like my niece, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or any woman that I partner with. Like I want her to know that like I'm gonna do my part to clear your path so that you can be great.
Right.
Right, but I don't want you to feel dependent on me.
Because you have a responsibility
Right.
to clear your own path.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't want to be your father. You have a father.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, with every it's like a breath. Like we inhale, we exhale. Like there will be moments when like I need to kind of step into that role,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. When my partner needs to kind of step in and nurse
Yeah.
me at times.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't become the expectation for each other. So for me, it's like letting our children know like you are enough. What do you came here for a reason? Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't expect every child to know that, but like it's our job as a community to make space for that child to explore that.
But the only way that we're able to do that, to make that space, is by doing that in that internal inner work,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It starts there. But even in my own life, like looking at all my coaches who are my greatest teachers, none of them are perfect. Right?
Yeah, they're human.
But even when they were masking their stress and trauma,
Mm-hmm.
they were able to create a safe space for me to kind of figure my stuff out. And that's where community is so valuable. Right? Like it took
Yeah.
me kind of becoming an adult and looking back. Oh wow! Like one of my coaches was a heroin addict. He was a functioning heroin addict.
A whole heroin addict.
One of my best friends was his nephew was selling this to him.
Whew.
You know what I'm saying? In like middle school, it's like But it's like that's life, right? But the memories that I have of one of my coaches is that like he was a phenomenal mentor to a bunch of young adolescent kids, boys in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess going back to your question about what we need to do for our young girls, it's like I think it's important to start early,
Mm-hmm.
so that they begin to kind of build toolkits,
Mm-hmm.
right, and have tools. Like one, because I know I'm enough, it's my expectation to be a self advocate.
Mm.
There's no other option,
Mm-hmm.
because we you know what I'm saying, like we need to kind of build like that self worth again. We've had it and we've lost it for many different reasons,
Right.
right? And even within like the black community, like there is a gender dynamic where like the life of a boy is almost valued more than the life of a girl, right? We can't have that no more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm grateful that at least in like in my family, like that dynamic was present,
Right.
and it was definitely reinforced by a lot of my aunts and my grandmother. But thankfully, in my own household, my mom was like, nah,
Right. Here's
like,
this iron board. Get these dishes.
yeah,
Right.
like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna learn today.
Mm-hmm. You go
When you go
learn
out in this
today.
world, you can remember that you're not acting for, you're not just Jamil. Like you are all of these people that you see at all your family reunions.
That part.
Right.
That part.
Everybody on this block, you are a reflection of.
That
and
part.
everybody can pull your coat if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's those types of like things that I see it, but it's a muscle that I think we need to cultivate and hold each other accountable on a daily basis. Not just when we turn the television on and one of our brothers or sisters is falling.
Hmm.
Right? And we have a moment of like action, a reaction.
Yeah.
Like we have to get past reacting and like, yo, let's be proactive.
Very proactive. All right. So I think, thank you. That was everything, right? The whole idea of understanding that we really have to hold space for each other,
Yeah.
right? Um, just want to circle back to something, and then we'll finish off our conversation that is going to continue forever. Why life wellness?
Great question. So I was studying at the time. I was studying for my master's. This is like 2017 and 2016, and I was talking to a mentor of mine, a phenomenal friend of mine. Her name is Khadija. Like, love this sister, and she was just. I love her because she always checks in.
Mm-hmm.
How am I? And like Jamil, like when it comes to you, like choosing to study this medicine, like what do you want to do with it? And she kept asking this question, and one day we had a conversation. I was like, I really am looking for mentors who look like me, specifically mentors who are partner.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and like that's my spirit, like that's me.
Right.
And I want to know that this can be done, right? Like I've seen it happen where you have one-off, like the sister's going and she's out here to be great, but she's recreating the wheel. This brother's over here recreating the wheel, and we're all doing great work, but like we don't seem to be coming together.
Right.
And I'm tired of kind of doing that myself, modeling that behavior. So I was very clear, like I really am looking for mentors who had these very specific experiences. And Kyla Lee was like, she just sent me a text. She just sent me the website. So you should go by and check it out. Like, and at the time, she had gotten work from I think both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, go by and see them.
Mm-hmm.
Go by and see them. And so I went by once, and you all were away. You were in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
And I went by a second time. And this is probably I went by like 2018 once, and again in 2019. And the second time I went by, I was going to pick up something for a friend of mine who had like an injury. And I was in the front, and I was talking. Adi and I started having a conversation.
Yeah.
And his energy was just dope, and I didn't realize he was the owner. And then he started, we started talking, and he started showing me around the space, and then it clicked. Okay, this is probably the owner. And then that's when I went to the back and I saw you there, and I was like, okay,
this is it.
And so for me, like wildlife wellness is because you are. I feel like I prayed for this space.
Woo.
And so like to me, it was like the power of my ashe, the power of like a vision, the power of prayer, the power of like just asking for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like when I met you, I'm like, yo, I want to be here. Like I want to be the same area as you are, because you all are doing the work and you're doing it with such intention.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's like as much as you're doing the work will come. right? The skill that comes with the work will naturally come over time. But like, I enjoy seeing the two of you interact because it reminds me that it's possible.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and for somebody who loves partnership and like has been successful, and then I've had moments where I have not been successful in relationship, to see you be so fearless in every aspect of your life is inspiring to me, and that's why I want to be here. And to see Ade in his quiet way of every day, like he's like the drum and bass in the band. It's like he allows you to kind of go off and hit the high notes and like make it beautiful and just iterate and just have an idea and be fruitful and come with it. Idea is like that baseline. That baseline.
Keeping the beat. Keeping the beat. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to your parents. Yeah, because without them, we wouldn't have you. And I really appreciate you.
Same.
All right. So more to come. We're about to do this.
It's all love.
All right. Cool. Thank you.